What just happened in Alberta should worry every single Canadian because it's part of a very bad trend where provincial governments are getting way too comfortable trampling on Canadians' rights. Something that I would argue risks eroding our very democracy. Let me explain. Alberta just invoked the notwithstanding clause to force striking teachers back to work. If you haven't already gotten acquainted, the notwithstanding clause is the messiest bitch in our charter. But the provinces only agreed to the charter because of it. The notwithstanding clause gives provincial or federal governments the ability to override certain parts of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for up to 5 years when they're passing a law, like back to work legislation. At the time, the framers of our charter, and therefore of the notwithstanding clause, made its intent very clear. It was seen, according to the Library of Parliament, as a, quote, safety valve to be used only on rare occasions. And it was supposed to be used for non-controversial issues. But lately, right-wing provincial governments have been using it less as a safety valve and more as a let's trample on the rights of the vulnerable valve. Like how Quebec used it to prevent public employees from wearing religious symbols in 2019 and renewed it in 2024, or how Saskatchewan used it to forcibly out trans kids to their parents. And now Alberta is using it to undermine workers' rights. Because thanks to a 2015 Supreme Court ruling, the Charter right to freedom of association has protected Canadians' right to strike. Strike actions are some of the only ways that workers can actually bargain for a better deal. And at a time when income inequality is reaching record highs in Canada, it is more important than ever to protect workers against exploitation. So because Alberta not only legislated teachers back to work, but used the notwithstanding clause to make sure they can't fight it, labor leaders are pissed. Here's what Unifor National President Lana Payne told me in an emailed statement. Quote, at a time when workers and their jobs are under attack all across the country from the Donald Trump trade war, the UCP government has decided to take a sledgehammer to workers' charter rights rather than work with us to protect Canadian jobs. This latest invocation has constitutional law experts worried too. Emmett McFarlane, who is a professor in the political science department at the University of Waterloo, told me, quote, while the notwithstanding clause is a valid constitutional instrument and is part of the charter, what we are seeing are governments using it in ways that are fundamentally destructive to the very idea of rights. Rather than being used to assert a legislature's alternative view on the balancing of competing rights or to address specific disagreement about reasonable limits on rights, governments are employing the clause to blatantly attack minority rights. Whether it's religious freedom in Quebec or forcing teachers to out trans kids in Saskatchewan, this is a concerning trend. Now Alberta has used it to attack labor rights, pushing it through without any meaningful legislative debate, serving as just another example of an ugly anti-rights populism. Without a doubt, most of the 1982 framers would find this unacceptable. So there you have it, folks. What do you think of all this?